Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Lauren Sullivan. Welcome to our home in Tennessee. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, my name is Lauren Sullivan. I'm the founder and curator behind Well by Design, and welcome to my home. So this home it has quite the story. My husband and I found this land back in 2020, early 2020, and the views are really what drew us to this property. The mountains are prioritized in almost every room. We started in early 2020. I reached out to Brooks and Filatico and spoke with Louise Brooks because I found a home on Pinterest that they had done in Connecticut, and it had this beautiful Belgian European design. It was actually called a Belgian farmhouse, but I didn't want to lean into the farmhouse aspect of it too much. But that's what inspired our home. So you could actually say this is the house that Pinterest built, in a way. So we went on a long 4-year building journey. My husband and I both love European architecture and design, and it's just so authentic, the use of natural materials and things that will age gracefully and patina well. So that was really the overall concept behind the design of our home. And we knew we wanted to bring in as many authentic materials as possible. Steel windows, copper gutters, slate roof, stucco, all these things that are hallmarks of European design, and put them in Tennessee. And it was just, sometimes these rolling hills remind me of what we see in the Cotswolds, and just to have this special European feel right here in the middle of Tennessee is really special. And taking those European elements, I didn't want to just have an English home or just have a French home or just have an Italian home. I really wanted to blend all of those together and blend eras and styles so that it's kind of difficult to pinpoint one precise time frame or location in Europe. And so antiques and vintage pieces are definitely a predominant theme throughout our home. Every room has at least one vintage or antique piece or both. And that is sort of what led to me founding Wellfound, which is my online storefront for antiques, because over the process of 4 years building this home, I was continually curating and sourcing, and mostly online, antiques and vintage pieces for the home. And that's when I got really comfortable buying these very much investment pieces, some of them, online. And then everybody, as they followed the build on Instagram and they started really becoming invested in the progress of our 4-year almost journey building the home, they were like, where did you get this? Where did you find this? How did you find it? And that's what really led me to be like, wait a minute, I love doing design work, but my heart is truly in the antique sourcing of everything. We really wanted to keep everything livable and comfortable. I mean, our 2 Shih Tzus sleep on the sofas all day, every day, and just make it something that holds a lot of special memories and meaning for us, but also is just a place that our families can gather. I wanted to infuse memory into every room of this home because it's a new build, and I think unless you have antiques or vintage pieces or found items or family heirlooms or all the above is even better. But I think that's what really gives new builds, or gives a new build a soul and character. Welcome to our entryway. Here is just a really special collection of pieces. Initially I started with the French tapestry, which took me months to source and track down the perfect one. And so that really was the first thing that I sourced for this entire space. And then next came the 11-foot Italian console. It's 18th century. It's quite long. It took like 11 people actually to bring it in the front door. And yeah, it's a pretty special piece. I've actually had people ask me if they could buy it from me, and I'm like, no, never. So, and then I had the lampshades done with the custom box pleat. And then we, obviously, this is a special piece. It's a vintage travertine table. And then this was actually a completely rusted bench. It's very neoclassical, but it was rusted. I found it on First Dibs. I bought the bench, completely rusted, and then sent it to my refinisher. They made it look beautiful, and then we had a seat cushion created for it. So, and then those are vintage Napoleon chairs over there. And then I love just a really special little vignette with little pieces that are kind of unexpected. Those are paintings by an artist that I admire, and then a couple of vintage pieces as well. So, and then of course the vintage French lamp, tiny little thing. So, and then the stair runner is very special because it's actually 6 different vintage runners that are placed precisely together by someone that's incredibly talented who came here to do the installation. And they kind of travel up the stairs. Each of the runners just kind of blends seamlessly in with the other, and the corners are mitered. It's just amazing what people can do. So that's a special piece. Obviously, the chandelier, it's made to be very shallow to fit that tiny space, but also like a little bit of a showstopper, obviously. The windows in here are very special. They are designed to just let natural light obviously flood the space. The architects did an amazing job of, this is kind of one of the signature hallmarks of the Belgian inspired house that they did that I mentioned that kind of inspired this house. And so we knew we wanted this lovely arched entry to be able to just have all this light pour in this space. Even on like a cloudy day, it's one of my favorite rooms to be in. So they did a great job of engineering this to just the scale and the size of it is just so fitting. And even though there's very tall ceilings in here, there's lots of individual rooms and lower ceilings, and it doesn't make you feel like you're in some giant open floor plan and that you would get lost in. So this is a grand tall ceiling, but I also feel like the scale and the proportion of it is just so great, and the staircase fits in seamlessly. Welcome to the living room. In this space, one of my favorite things that I don't think gets enough credit is that, first of all, the ceilings are very tall, but the actual footprint of the space is small. And so it still feels intimate and cozy and not giant and open. And I think that's crucial for a space that has such tall ceilings. So I love that about this room. And this mid-century Scandinavian chandelier is the very first piece I sourced for the home in 2021. It's a truly, special piece for me, mainly because I know it's like the very first thing I sourced for the house. And then the fireplace is a very special piece. This is limestone that we created with Brooks and Filatico specifically for the space. And then we did something really unique. I had an inspo image that I specifically wanted for the firebox, for the brickwork. So we took that image and then basically sourced the thin bricks and then installed them in such a way that it's on their thin edge, and then created the herringbone pattern and then over-grouted it, like smeared it, and then sanded off what you see exposed. So it's like, it's just not your average firebox, which is what I love about it. And of course, some people don't like a TV above their fireplace, but we're TV people, and this is where we live, so mostly in this space and in the kitchen, so we obviously have to have the TV. That was a battle that I would gladly lose. So, and then the sofas, I knew I wanted twin sofas, and then the coffee table was made specifically to fit the space. I love the mix of materials with the iron base and then the wood top. The chairs were actually, I think, the second set of things that I sourced for the room. They were in a different fabric. I had them reupholstered with this Schumacher fabric that I loved. I actually chose the rug, it's a vintage rug, and the fabric together in 2021, very early on. Didn't know how the rest of the space would come together, but I knew that I had the chandelier, the rug, and the 2 chairs. So, and then I have a Target lamp right here, front and center, because I love it. So I am a very big supporter of buying what you love. I think that if you buy what you love, you're going to keep it longer. You're going to always find a space for it most of the time, as opposed to just buying something to fill a space that you may or may not love very long, and then you're going to just throw it away and get something else. So buy what you love would be my biggest advice. So this tree is super special. It was designed to fit this huge corner, or tall corner, but it actually has real trunks and then artificial leaves. So people actually ask if it's real quite a bit, and it partially is real, but yeah, I don't think it'll ever leave the space. So, and this area here is really special. I saw a similar version of paneling in a space. I think it was on a staircase or something. And I was like, I would love to create that here and make it just flow seamlessly from ceiling to closet, because these are actually concealed closets, coat closets. So, yeah. And then we also changed the floor up here to give it this special little lay. So I like the transition, and it kind of designates the 2 spaces. Basically, a lot of the design inspo that I had gathered over the years, I was like, where can we use this? Where can we use this? Let's find a place to do this. And so it was a lot of that going on. So welcome to the kitchen. In this space, one of the biggest features, obviously, are these 4 pendant lights. And we specifically chose them to help lower the tall ceiling height and bring the ceiling down to make it feel cozier. Because I do like the tall ceilings. Some people, I guess, don't favor a tall ceiling in a kitchen. I personally love it, but I also appreciate being able to lower the ceiling and take up this volume with the very large pendants. And we wanted it to have a European feel, not be too precious. I am one that I don't care about marble getting worn. It is etched, probably needs to already be resealed, but it is what it is. And I think if you use marble, you just have to be kind of comfortable with that if you're gonna use it and cook. So I like that it has the thinner 2 centimeter edge profile. We used them as the slabs as they were and didn't build them up any. And then we had quite an engineering feat to do, I guess, the shelves. Obviously, it's pretty heavy. And a lot of people don't realize that this is very intentional, this slab seam detail. It's brass, and I've actually had people be like, oh, is that a giant seam showing on the wall? And you may not like it, I love it, but it is definitely supposed to be there. It's a brass detail that we love, so. And then, of course, we tried to hide very well the outlets into the marble, and we had someone paint these to mimic the marble and blend in very well. So we wanted to have 2 islands. We spend a lot of time in the kitchen. We work at this island. We obviously use this island for dishwasher, sink, all the things. The flow here is very great because you've got dishwasher, microwave, oven, sink, everything kind of right here in your path of travel. But we also have these reeded details on the end panels because I didn't want to use them on the drawer fronts where in a kitchen they might be more prone to spills or things like that. So we put them under the bar stools, and then we did brass capped feet to make the islands just feel a little bit more like furniture. We also did applied moldings around the bases of the islands, but then in the center where the traffic mainly is, we kept them recessed so that you're not like constantly walking up to the sink or wherever and hitting the molding. So on the back sides, it looks like furniture, but then you have recessed toe kicks in the center aisle where you do most of your traveling. So these built-ins are pretty special. They obviously have lighting, but we wanted the insides to be stained like the islands and the cabinets. And then we used the cremone bolts to kind of give it a little bit of extra flair, I guess you'd say. We never turn the lights on mostly, but they're there. And I love the Gothic mottled glass look. I wanted it to look like you can't quite tell the details of what's in the cabinets, but you can see what's there. So that's just a textural thing that I like that we added. So in the pantry, we have a lot of storage in here because we don't have a lot of upper cabinets in the kitchen itself. We did maximize all the storage that we could vertically in the kitchen. So things that are seasonal or entertaining things have a home in there with touch latch cabinets, but at the very top. But in here we have obviously all the snacks and food and things, but I wanted a little asymmetrical moment here. So we did that with the sink being off to the side. There's trash cans, all kinds of dog food things in here, which my dogs like this room because they know food comes from here. And then these brass and glass shelves were quite the undertaking. They're custom, but they were fun to install because they're suspended from the ceiling. So that was a whole thing. And then this is really weird. I don't think people are like, what is this? But my husband and I love a Berkey water filter. So we have our Berkey here, and this is a pot filler that coordinates with the kitchen pot filler. And then that way we just fill it up here and then use it. So it's very convenient. So in the dining room, there are plenty of right angles. I feel like with the window grids and the ceiling detail, and it's a rectangle, there's just a lot of right angles. So I wanted to bring in contrast to that with the oval dining table, and then it's echoed in the chair silhouette, the shape of the light fixture, the end chairs that are upholstered. I just wanted to kind of contrast all the right angle things. So that was important for me. These are actually vintage, and I found them in Round Top, Texas, and they were originally from a bar in Belgium. So in the dining room, it's also one of our favorite views, and the whole back side of the house really prioritizes the views to the mountains. And Brooks and Filatico did a great job of putting a lot of primary used spaces in the back of the house so that we could have those views and maximize the views. So that's one of our most favorite things. The sunsets in this room and any area along the back side of the house is just phenomenal. So we really, really appreciate the view. So out here on the covered porch, obviously the view is the main focus, and sunsets back here are just our favorite thing. And then in the fall, we love having the fireplace on, watching football, watching TV out here. It stays under cover and nice and dry. And then of course we have the pass-through to the bar that we can use if we have guests over. But the really special piece out here is actually this coffee table. I found it in Round Top, and it's extremely heavy, and I don't think it'll ever leave this covered porch. We were very intentional about wanting a seating area to watch TV, have the fireplace, and then also a designated dining space where we had room for family to all sit at one table, which was also a big goal of mine for our dining room. I wanted to make sure it was long enough, big enough that everybody could sit at one table, because so often we're always at different tables. So that's the dining space. We use this a lot, especially in the summer for entertaining, and it's just up here with the breeze and the views. It's really one of our favorite spots in the whole house. So my love for design started very early. Really is some of my earliest memories. My grandmother's house was always the perfect 80s and 90s curated space. Chintz wallpaper, florals everywhere, the bedspreads. I had a bedroom at her house because I stayed there all the time, and that's my earliest design memory. She also is very talented with florals. She's now 85 and she did all the florals for this video shoot today. And she's just super talented, and I watched her all of my life do these things, and that is one of the earliest inspirations for me. And then also my parents, they're a little bit of a DIY kind of mentality sometimes. I mean, that's not their profession, but they like to do projects. And so I also watched that growing up. And I bought my first antique when I was 8 years old with my grandmother using my birthday money. I got a $200 armoire, and then my parents turned it into an entertainment center for my bedroom at the time. So that was like middle school. And so that's where it all kind of started. And I grew up around that, and I knew I loved it, but I kind of thought, oh, I need to do something in the medical field because that's what you're supposed to do. So long story short, I started working in a pharmacy. I became a pharmacist. I was a pharmacist for almost 10 years before I was like, you know what, I don't want to do this every day for the rest of my life. So I went back to school and got my master's in healthcare design from NYSID, New York School of Interior Design. And they have just phenomenal programs and professors, and I learned so much there. Even though it was healthcare design, I learned so much that applies to residential design, and I didn't quite know how I would use that at the time, because I was like, oh, let me just mesh healthcare and design, because that seems logical. So anyway, I did that, and then after a couple of years, I was like, you know what, why am I like trying to do both worlds when I really just love residential design? And that's it, looking back, I mean, that was obvious. So I started Well by Design. I offered some virtual design services because I knew I could do those from anywhere, traveling or anything else. I offer very limited virtual design services now in the form of consultations because I still enjoy working with people, but my heart and my motivation and everything I love doing is really revolving around sourcing antiques. And this house, like I said, is kind of just fueled all of that in a way over the years. But then when I look back on my childhood, it all fits together perfectly. So that's in a nutshell how I came to be. So in the powder room, this is kind of a jewel box space. We have a Susan Harder mural that was custom made for the space, and then a ceiling wood detail that we did. The base at the bottom is, of course, the same stone that was used for the vanity. And I just love the little details, like the scallop detail, the faucet, which feels very old school. And this is a vintage French mirror that I actually did not intend to use here. Didn't know where I would use it actually, and I'd had it for years, and it just so happens that it worked great in here. So. The mudroom is kind of the workhorse space of our house because, you know, and people are afraid of marble floors, but these are marble and we have had everything on them, and they hold up well to me. I mean, there's a reason they're used in, you know, churches in Europe thousands of years ago. So here they are. But we have the custom lockers and then the shoe bins, which my family has a house shoe drawer. So all my family's house shoes live in one drawer here. But this space, I wanted to feel like just this continuous paneled room of just a moody overall vibe. So this is actually an antique English railway bench, and it's quite old. But it's so sturdy, and we sit here like every day to like go in and out the door and put stuff here when we carry stuff in from the garage. It's just a very used space. The Dutch door, we do open very occasionally, but I really just love it for its look and the character of it. Then in here is the dog wash room, which everybody loves. Bernie and Watson get plenty of baths in this sink. You may not think it looks like it, but they have accidents, and this is where they get cleaned up. And this is a battery-powered sconce that we added after the fact, but I love it because it's just another little detail. And Then this is actually a limestone countertop, which is very durable for what this is used for. And I love like the drain inlay and the long apron for spills and things like that. We also totally put waterworks tile everywhere in this space. It's very small, but the window trim, the casing, the base, the arched barrel ceiling is all in tile. And for a room where dogs shake and do things, I think it was very fitting. So this is the primary bedroom, and we really wanted to create a space that felt very calm and not busy, not overly done, not overly fussy. That was kind of the goal in here. And we started with the rug because I knew that I had a vintage rug that we used in the sitting area that I wanted to echo the tones of. So we got the rug here that is just, I love it. It's like the most comfortable armadillo rug in the world. I started with that, and then we brought in this upholstery for the bench fabric. And then I feel like our bedrooms sometimes just happened by chance because I knew the tones I wanted to use, and then everything just kind of worked out with the olives and the blushes and the wood tones. So on the bed we did this custom bolster pillow, and we echoed the bench fabric on the trim on either end, which is very subtle, but a detail I appreciate. And then this is a striped velvet. And then the nightstand has a few special pieces for me, a vintage bowl, a bronze bowl, and then this is from my step-grandmother, this dish, and then this is a clock from my great-grandmother. So just a few little special items in here. And then, of course, the Charles Dudoy table was obviously high on my wish list, and I finally found one. Knew that I wanted to put it somewhere I would see it every day, and it just happened to work beautifully here with the Tired Man chairs. And this is a space we use all the time because the views are just so beautiful with the sunset, and this is an area we really love. So these are actually botanicals that we gathered on one of our first trips to Blackberry Farm, and then I pressed them in a book for like years till I knew where I would use them, and then I had them framed. So it's just a special little area here of artwork for us. For the fireplace, we did obviously plaster, and then we did this mantle of wood here, but it's almost flesh. So it's just a subtle little detail, but it actually required like a lot of coordinating to execute this whole thing. And then we did the firebox in the dry stacked brick. So we have the herringbone on the wall and then the running bond on the floor. And it's just really, I don't know, it's a nice texture and detail that's kind of subtle, but you notice it. Okay, so this is an antique mirror that I actually found from Jean Stouffer, and I told her, I said, if you ever sell it, I want that for my bedroom, because I was looking for a large antique gilded mirror. So that's where that came from. Very special to me. She's very special to me, and I just love the mirror. So, and I like that I get to see it every day and use it. So, and then this is a vintage stool. This is a stone plinth from District Loom. And I just like how the textures and the pieces all interact with each other and the forms. That's just something I like to look at a lot. And so that's kind of how those all came to be. So in our primary bathroom, we obviously capitalized on the view again with the tub. And the tub is very special. It's from England. It's catchpole and rye. And it has the nickel and then the brass. And then we wanted to bring in a mixture of metals with the polished nickel and the brass throughout the entire space. So that's where all of this kind of came from, the idea. And the vanities, the reading detail is the same as what we have in our kitchen. So it just kind of echoes that design throughout the house. Well, it's only used in those two spaces, but it's consistent in size. And then we did this cased marble opening, which I love. It's just a subtle little detail that again adds some character So on the vanity walls, we wanted to carry the tile all the way to the ceiling and throughout the entire wall. It's almost like wallpaper, but tile. And if you look closely, the shape of this picket tile is echoed in the shape of the floor tile. So that was intentional. Okay, so in this little wall niche, I just wanted another way to bring in a visually interesting place. So we did the reeded paneling in the back, the marble shelves, and then the plaster around. And I have vintage paintings, a couple, and just really special little things that it's just a nice little way of displaying those items in a bathroom where you wouldn't commonly see them. And in our water closet, we have the look of grass cloth, but it is washable and, you know, all good for a bathroom. So I really love the texture that this adds to. And otherwise, you know, people, a lot of times this is an underrated space, but I think you gotta be in here, so you may as well make it look pretty. So this room is really unique because at first it was meant to be like a makeup dressing room, and then I was like, I stand to put my makeup on, so we're just gonna do that at the vanity. And then this transformed into like a little sitting area, which we also have all of our linen storage in this lovely built-in. But this has actually become one of my favorite spaces in the house because it's just tucked away. It's got this whole corner of windows. When the lamps are on and it's a dark, dreary day, this is a cozy little place to be, and you can still see the view of the mountains directly behind the tub. It's just a really sweet little space. And our linen storage, I again wanted to use some sort of glass detail, so we did the reeded glass in here, which sort of echoes the reeded paneling on our vanities. But again, I didn't want you to be able to perfectly see all the linens, so a little textured glass goes a long way. Now let's look at the study. It's right through these doors. So this is primarily used by my husband, but it's meant to be able for two people to comfortably work in here. It has very wide desk areas built for large monitors and a TV. And then this is the coffee bar, which I don't drink coffee, but my husband does, and he's in here every single day. So this is just a really special place because we've got the wire mesh fronts on the cabinetry, the soapstone scallop detail on the sink, and I think it's just a really great mix of materials in here. And we brought in antique brass with brass in here. The sconces are also very special, and this opens up. It's great for entertaining because this is the covered porch area, and then these open directly up onto the porch, so you can pass stuff through, or you can put food here, and it's very easily accessible. So in the study, we wanted it to have this very collegiate, moody, old school feel. So I knew that I wanted to mix. This is actually stained wood. It's in a very dark stain. It's not painted, but I wanted to mix the two tones of stains and then also bring in the lighter stain on the ceiling with the herringbone pattern. So we just wanted it to feel overall really moody, but we also have so many special pieces in here, like from my great-grandmother and my husband's original medical school bag from medical school that I had the leather restored on, and just different pieces for each of us that mean a lot we have in this room. And this chair is from when my husband was in college, and you just can't recreate that. So I had the seat custom made for it in the plaid fabric. And here we have a really special inlay. It's the crest for my husband's alma mater. So that's really unique. The mill worker did that custom. Obviously the portrait of our puppies is there. And just a lot of special things are in here. My sister had this watercolor painted for the first Christmas that we spent in the house. So that goes there. And I have mortars and pestles because obviously as a pharmacist I collect those. The older the better. So it's a really special place. And we purposely did the hardware on the cabinets in this leather and brass just to bring in more materials and mix, just have some contrast and mix materials with the woods and the tones and everything. So this is a little vestibule, which is sort of like a tiny room with a bunch of doors for us because one leads to a closet and an office and different places. But I wanted it to feel very special. So it has lacquered walls and plenty of trim detail. And then a plaster ceiling in the same tone as the lacquer walls, or same color, so that I like the contrast of that, like the high shine lacquer walls with the earthy, muted tone or texture of the plaster on the ceiling. And then this is an antique piece. It's a German sideboard, and I love the little scallop detail along the bottom. This is a vintage French lamp that we leave on quite a bit. And then just some really special artwork. I found this at Round Top. The tones are just, I was like, I know exactly where that can go. So I'm a firm believer in buying what you love and you'll always find a place for it, which I think I've said, but it's like, I don't know, my soapbox, I guess. I started Wellfound as an online storefront in order to give people a place that they could look for antiques and vintage items that were in my style and the things that I like to curate. And my whole premise for the entire shop was that I wouldn't source anything that I wouldn't put in my own home, because everyone had followed our home build and my sourcing adventures for so long that that's kind of the aesthetic they had come to appreciate, and the mixing of materials and styles and eras and different locations and just everything that I had mixed. So that's really what spawned Wellfound. Wellfound is released in volumes. Each volume is a different location where I've sourced in Europe. What I love about Wellfound is I've tried to provide so much info online for people to feel really comfortable making a purchase, and of course reaching out for any questions. And I also understand the unique issues that designers face when sourcing vintage and antique pieces. So we do offer a trade discount, and I really want to be a resource for my fellow designers because I think it can sometimes get tricky and you don't know who you can sometimes trust with vintage and antique pieces. So I think this is just a new resource and avenue for people to find quality pieces that I trust from people that I've sourced from and bring them to the public. Upstairs on this second floor mezzanine, it's really special because you get views of both the front and the back of the house at the same time. And we were really intentional with the furniture because we wanted to make sure it didn't disturb the height of the handrail. And I just love this little space because it's just really special with the sunset. It's a great place to read, and it's just an unexpected place. This is part of Wellfound Volume 1, this table. It's very special. It's a French piece, and it's listed at the bottom of my website and priced accordingly because it's my grandmother and my husband's favorite piece I've ever bought in my life, and they do not want me to sell it. So hopefully, if somebody buys it, great, but otherwise it lives here. And that's a vintage chain link lamp that's super special for us. And just a lot of little fun details in here. In this guest bedroom, I knew that I wanted to do the exposed rafter ceiling detail with the paneling. And I thought this is the perfect spot for that because it has such a unique ceiling shape. So we worked with Brooks & Filatico on laying this ceiling design out. And then I knew I wanted to wallpaper this entire space. So we used the Kelly Ventura Fig wallpaper here. It's a grass cloth, and we pulled tones from that to use Faro and Ball on the ceiling and on all the baseboard and trim. And then, of course, we had this really cozy armadillo rug that I love, a vintage dresser, and That's a vintage side table, an antique mirror. There's just a lot of antiques and vintage items in here. The nightstand lamps are also antiques. So yeah, they're just very special pieces. And this screen is actually a walnut screen. It's also an antique piece. It's mid-century, or it's vintage. It's a mid-century piece. So this piece is really special. I found him at an antique shop while traveling, and I just loved him, and I knew I wanted to use him somewhere. So he just happened to work out great in here. And then we did a lot of tones that are in the wallpaper throughout the room, but I wanted to also have plenty of room for if we have a guest, for them to have a place to sit, a place to read, a place to do anything. So these swivel, and I love these chairs for that. They're just super versatile. And I had this lampshade made in the wallpaper fabric, again, to tie it all into the pattern. So in this guest bath, we used the Calcutta Viola marble and did the integrated sink in here, which is really special. And then we have the vintage chandelier, which I think I got on Etsy, but it's so special because it's just super unique. And then I have my great-grandmother's dressing table items with these here. And she was 97 when she passed away. So these are really, really special because I knew her. And yeah, and then I wanted to do caning somewhere in the house, and it just so happened that we chose to do it on the vanity here in this bathroom. And then I wanted to echo the marble with the plinth, but also a place to like sit stuff if guests are here. And then it just this is like a dish that belonged to my grandmother. Just different things. I just love having meaningful stuff in your house and in your different rooms that you get to appreciate, when it could just be like sitting on a shelf in storage or something. So then in the bathroom also, we have the shower, which is very special. It's actually a waterproof plaster shower that was custom colored to match the blush tile on the wall. So this gets a lot of attention because it's just really unique, and people are very interested in the waterproof plaster. So, and we did the marble casing. We also did the marble inlay on the floor, and we were careful to hone the finish on this marble because that could be slippery when it's wet. So this inlay on the floor is honed to help people not fall. So with both guest bedrooms, we actually did a suite, and the bedroom door is out on the mezzanine for each bedroom. So there's a door for the bathroom, but there's not an actual door into the bedroom itself. So each suite is its own separate space. And in this hallway, we wanted to do this bench seat with a lot of storage for linens and things, and the cravat fabric on the bench seat and the cushions. And then of course, vintage artwork, plenty of that. It's just it's a practical space, but I also like to have a space where guests can sit and not just feel like they're in a bedroom. In this guest bedroom, the rug was the very first thing I started with, which is often the case I find in rooms that I design. This is a vintage rug, and then I pulled the tones from the rug for everything else in the room. I knew I wanted to do the scalloped headboard in the brown stripe, and everything kind of fell from there. I'd had these bird prints for several years. They turned out to be the perfect tones for this room. And there's a lot of found objects and vintage items in here. I've got a little pottery that was an heirloom from my great-grandmother's grandmother. So it's just some old pottery and pieces. And this built-in dresser, I have plans to maybe hand paint some florals on it. Not myself, but somebody do that that's very talented at it, not me. But I love having this built-in piece that is also a fun color and brings in some of the green from outside, and also in the tones that are used throughout the room. So in this guest bath, I wanted it to feel completely different, and I wanted to bring in a lot of cooler tones. And then we did this fun scallop on the front of the vanity, carried it onto the bottom of the tub detail, and then did straight stacked white tile just to play off the scallop but not be too distracting. And then I love exposed plumbing for the old school feel of it, so we did that in both guest bathrooms. And a fun little ledge detail, but again, this room was all about cool metals. And then we also have a solar tube that brings in tons of natural light in the daytime. So even if the lights are out, you can just see, it's so wild because there's just a lot of natural light in this little room. So this space is where we do all the holiday things, all the eves like Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, Thanksgiving Day parade. It's just a really cozy space in the basement that everybody can hang out in. We have this sofa, and I swore I would never have a reclining sofa, but this reclines, the headrest and the footrest. And so it's actually pretty awesome. So anyway, vintage chairs, and then a vintage coffee table, and we have a lot of things in the bookshelves that remind us of travels to Africa with our family, and just some really special pieces. I wanted to do the scallop detail of the ceiling, and this turned out to be a great spot for that. It's just a lot of intentional details that some people probably notice. In the bar area, we did this brass footrail that I just think is a nice old school touch, and the brackets to match. Then I have some Etsy bar stools that swivel, and they're super comfy. And we did the cabinetry in a lacquer finish, which is actually custom colored to match the smeg. So everything is the same color as the smeg. And then we did this terracotta hand-painted tile on the wall. Again, we hid the outlets really well. They did such a great job painting these, and you can't even tell they're there. So, and I wanted to bring in polished nickel down here with this kind of vintagey inspired hardware. And then I found this guy at High Point in the Antique and Design Center, and my mother basically forced me to buy him. He's just fun, so there he is. So in our game room, we have air hockey and pool, and this entire area was created for my grandfather, who is 92 years old, and he is such a pool shark to this day. Last year, we had a really special photo shoot here, and we had him come over, and he actually did his trick shots on video, and it's just like the most special footage I have of him. And so this is his space. Like, I would not have had a pool table if it was not for my grandfather. So this is a really special place. And we have, of course, some seating here when you're playing pool, but then this sign was custom made in his handwriting, this neon sign on Etsy. And I've had that for years of his handwriting, and it's just something that he always said to me, so we put it in this space. So my entire family, we just love my grandfather, so everybody just loves this space. And then we did a gallery wall over here. We used this really fun marble sconce, and then some vintage pieces scattered throughout, some from Josh Young, and I love the way this gallery wall turned out. This is actually a newspaper clipping from my step-grandfather from when they lived in New York that I stumbled across, and I just thought it was fun. So this is the hot yoga room, and I've taken hot yoga now for almost 8 years, and I love hot power yoga. So having a space designated for that in the house was a great thing for us to be able to include. My husband actually does a lot of his workouts in here. He actually has been using it more than I have, so go figure. But I love the cushioned floor. It's specific to yoga studios. It actually is what they have in my local studio, so that makes it super nice because it's consistent if I want to practice at home or at the yoga studio. And then there was an image I had as inspo, and I wanted to bring in as much natural light as possible and also have a preserved moss wall and bring in nature. And so that's what led to the skylights, the whole corner of windows, and the greenery. This is our greenhouse, and this is a really special place for us. I knew from the very beginning I wanted to incorporate a greenhouse, and so this was all designed and accounted for from the very beginning of the home build. And I knew I wanted to use a Hartley Botanic greenhouse. So this is one of their smaller models. And I mean, obviously I don't need a massive greenhouse, but I love the cozy element of this size. And I love that we were able to incorporate the limestone, the Tennessee limestone on the house. We echoed that for the base of the greenhouse. And then we also used the same color for the windows on the home for the actual greenhouse structure. So it very much feels like it belongs to the house. And we had to add the shades after the fact because everything was getting scorched to death in the Tennessee sun. So the shades have been a lifesaver for all the plants. And I like changing things out seasonally. We do a lot of Christmas decorations in here at Christmas time, and it's just a fun space to have. We were really intentional about the pavers leading to the greenhouse. We did a fun diamond shape and lined that up with the architects very specifically. And then I think the stone retaining walls surrounding it just feel really special and very English. In here we have a few special pieces. This is a vintage worktop table, and I wanted something that could withstand being beat up or used or be out in the elements. So then I had this little soap fun thing installed. It's actually very useful. And then this onyx sink from Olive Atelier. And then this is a copper and brass faucet that I sourced on Etsy and they made for us. And then I have a sprayer, so that's super helpful too with the plants. And then we did reclaimed Spanish stone flooring that I found online for the center of the greenhouse. So I felt like it wasn't too precious for an environment like this because it's already seen a few lives. And this is a vintage bistro table and vintage chairs as well. So there really is vintage and antiques everywhere. Home to me means a place to gather, and it also evokes a feeling. I think that anybody can have a new build, a home, whatever, but it's the feeling that that space evokes when you enter it that really means, holds something special to everyone. And I think in being intentional, but also not too precious, and sourcing things and using materials that resonate with you. I mean, my home's not gonna look like someone else's home, and their home may not look like, someone else's home. And it's just such a unique thing to live and breathe and go about your daily life within a space and see how that space ages with you. And you may not use a space the way you do today 10 years from now, and just also planning for those types of changes and what you might foresee using, something totally different in 10 years than you did today, and taking all those things into consideration. I think home means feeling and gathering and memory. I think that's one of the most special things for me about this home is I can look in every corner and remember a design decision with our architects, or a meeting, or a phone call, or a Zoom call, or my stepdad hung this, my grandmother did this, my mother helped with this, my husband did this. I don't operate with a big team, and so for me this home is just really, really special because it was a lot of people that are very close to me helping me bring it to life, especially like in the end after construction. So I think just feeling and being comfortable, and it doesn't matter the size, it doesn't matter the location, it's that it's home to you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.